So you're going to tell us about your migration story, right?
Yes, I am.
So here are a few questions. What was your motivation to move?
My father's motivation to have us move from Colombia to the United States, to Miami, Florida, was that there was a lot of conflict in Colombia between the drug traffickers, the FARC, which were there was guerrilla warfare. And so there was a lot of conflict and a lot of violence. So my father decided that it wasn't a place to raise 3 children. We were 3 daughters. So he decided that he wanted to move to the United States.
What were your or your parents' hopes for your new life here?
They were hoping that we would be able to get a great education and be able to live happily in the United States. It wasn't where my father wanted to live. My father always loved Colombia. He would have stayed there if he didn't have any children. But his hope was that we would go to school there, graduate from there, go to college, and be able to live our own lives. And as soon as he retired, he would move back to Colombia.
Why did you choose to come here instead of somewhere else?
We already had family in the United States. We already had family in Miami. I had an uncle and an aunt and that's why we decided to go to Miami.
Who did you come with and who did you leave behind? Did anyone come ahead of you?
My father moved to the States about a year before we did. So he moved to the States first. He was working for IBM there. So he moved to the States first, and then I went with my mother and my 2 little sisters when I was 7 years old.
Oh.
And we left everybody else behind, uncles, aunts, my grandparents, both my grandparents on both sides of my family, we left them behind.
What was the most difficult part about leaving?
Leaving our family, leaving everything I knew, leaving my school, leaving my friends. I had lived in the same place for many years, so I was very comfortable. I was 7 years old, so I already understood. And it was a little scary knowing that we were going to a new place, but it was also exciting.
What was your journey to this new country like?
The journey was actually really hard because we tried to go legally to the United States. My father tried to get us visas to go to the United States, and they wouldn't give us visas because they knew we were going to stay if we got visas. So we actually entered the country illegally. So it took 2 weeks traveling from Colombia all the way to the border to Mexico border, and we actually went through a tunnel into Nogales, Mexico, from Nogales, Mexico to Nogales, Arizona. We went through a tunnel. So it was actually very, very hard. Not so much for us because we were very young, so we don't remember. I remember, but we weren't afraid because we didn't know there was something to be afraid of. My mother was very afraid. She was afraid that someone might take us. She was afraid because she didn't speak English. She was afraid because we were very young. I was 7, and my other sisters were 6 and 4.
What was the most difficult part of coming here?
The most difficult part. Well, we were very comfortable in Colombia when we lived there. And when we first moved to the United States, we struggled. We struggled because my father was no longer working for IBM. And because we were not legal, they had to work what they call under the table. They couldn't get legal jobs. So they didn't make a lot of money when we first got there. And so we had been used to this, we had a very comfortable lifestyle in Colombia. So when we moved to the States, it wasn't easy because we didn't have that much money. So we couldn't, it was hard to get a car. It was hard to get an apartment. So our life was changed quite drastically in that way. Also, going to school was kind of hard because everybody spoke English and I spoke Spanish. So I had to learn English very quickly, and I was already 7 years old. And we didn't have most of my family was in Colombia. And so I had my aunt and her husband. So we really didn't have a lot of family there. So that made it kind of hard.
What was it like when you first arrived there?
It was exciting and scary. It was exciting because I had never seen a grocery store like the kinds you see in the States when we were living in Colombia. It was exciting because I saw people I had never seen before. It was very diverse. So we were very excited, but it was also a little bit scary because it was very different and very new.
What surprised you the most?
What surprised me the most? I think all the stores. I think that surprised me a lot. How many people lived in Miami? There were so many people in Miami, and all the stores and everything that they sold. It just wasn't like that in the city where we were.
What did you miss most about the country or place you came from?
My family and Colombian food.
Who was the most helpful with getting you settled?
When we first got there, like I said, we didn't have much of anything. And we moved into this apartment, and we had nothing. We had no furniture, we had nothing. And the Cuban community that lived there was so amazing. Within like hours of us arriving to the apartment, and all the people, the neighbors in the building saw that we had nothing. They brought beds, they brought us a TV. It was quite amazing to see how generous the Cuban community was, because there are many Cubans in Miami.
Yeah. Migration can be hard. Where did you find the strength in difficult times?
Like I said, I don't think it was so hard for me because I was kind of young, but I think it was really hard for my parents. But I think my parents found their strength in the idea that in America, you can always have that dream that you're going to be able to, your kids are going to have a better life. And I think that's what they thought. They were giving us an opportunity to have a much better life than we could have in Colombia, when my father was sure that life was going to get much worse because of all the problems that they had there with the conflict in Colombia.
How do you think that migration has changed you?
I think I am who I am because of the migration. I was educated in the United States. As far as I'm concerned, as much as I love Colombia and I love the heritage that I come from, I consider myself American. I was educated in America, and I think it's made me the strong woman that I am and who I am. I think it gave me opportunities that I probably would have never had in Colombia.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For
Thank you.